Welcome to the world of mysteries and horrors. Today, we'll tell you a story that will make you look over your shoulder. The story of Melissa, who once encountered a secret hidden in an abandoned house. Get ready for a chilling journey. Melissa was in a small town, visiting an old friend. The locals told tales of a cursed house on the outskirts, a place no one dared to visit. Curiosity got the better of her, and one evening, she decided to find this house, following an overgrown ancient path. Melissa stepped into the abandoned estate at the end of the long-forgotten road. Inside, it was dark and cold, the air thick with the smell of dampness. Her gaze was immediately drawn to a large antique mirror covered in dust and cobwebs, standing in the center of the room. It looked as if it had been waiting for her. Her footsteps echoed through the room as she approached the mirror. It seemed strange. Its reflection of the room appeared slightly distorted, as if the mirror showed more than just reality. A chill ran down her spine. She reached out to wipe away the layer of dust, but as her fingers touched the glass, the surface rippled like water. At that moment, she heard a faint whisper that seemed to emanate from deep within the mirror. The whisper grew louder, forming words she couldn't understand. She turned around, feeling someone's presence behind her, but the room was empty. Only the shadows on the walls seemed to move, as if they had lives of their own. Suddenly, the mirror darkened, its surface turning black as night. Within it, a figure appeared, its face hidden beneath a hood. It raised a hand pointing directly at Melissa, and its whisper turned into a loud, menacing voice. Melissa stumbled back, but the floor beneath her feet creaked and began to give way. She tried to keep her balance but fell, screaming, into the darkness below. In her final moments, before losing consciousness, she heard the voice from the mirror. "You should not have come here." She woke up in a strange room where everything was upside down. Furniture, the chandelier, even the paintings on the walls hung inverted. In the corner stood the same mirror, now covered in bloody handprints. Melissa stood up and tried to approach the mirror, but black droplets began to seep from its surface. The liquid spread across the floor, forming sinister shadows that started moving towards her. The shadows coiled around her legs, and she felt herself being pulled downward. She screamed, but laughter echoed from the mirror, drowning out her cries. It felt like the end, but at the last moment, light suddenly filled the room, and the shadows retreated. Melissa collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, but the mirror stood still, as if nothing had happened. On its surface, new words appeared. "This is only the beginning." Melissa stepped onto the creaking porch and pushed open the heavy wooden door. It swung open with unexpected ease, revealing a spacious hall filled with the thick smell of dampness and decay. Her footsteps echoed through the empty house. On the walls hung old, faded portraits, and in the center of the room stood a large, mirrored cabinet, coated in a thick layer of dust. She approached the cabinet and cautiously wiped the mirror with her hand. In its dim reflection, she glimpsed a figure standing behind her, but when she turned, no one was there. A chill ran down her spine. She turned back to the mirror, and this time, words appeared in the reflection, as if written from the inside. "Leave while you still can." Suddenly, a dull thud sounded, as if something heavy had fallen upstairs. Melissa flinched, but curiosity drove her to climb the old staircase. On the second floor, a long, narrow corridor stretched before her, with closed doors on either side. At the end of the hallway was one door, slightly ajar and creaking in the wind. She cautiously approached the ajar door and peeked inside. The room was nearly empty except for an old table with a diary lying in the center. The diary looked untouched for years. Its cover bore a strange symbol, a circle with intersecting lines in the center, and the words, "Do not open." Conflicting emotions overwhelmed Melissa. She knew she should leave the diary alone, but she couldn't resist the urge to see what it held. Summoning her courage, she opened the diary. On the first page was a trembling handwritten note. "Whoever reads this will awaken them. Now you are next." The light in the room began to dim, and the shadows on the walls started moving as if they had a will of their own. Melissa stepped back, her eyes fixed on the diary, which now glowed with a faint red light. The glow intensified, and strange symbols began to rise from the pages, floating in the air. The symbols connected, forming a face that stared directly at her. The face spoke in a low, hissing voice. "You have awakened us. There is no escape now." Melissa tried to close the diary, but its pages turned on their own, revealing new entries. The new pages showed drawings of creatures with long claws and empty eyes that seemed to move if you stared too long. One of the drawings began to glow, and a shadow emerged from the page, taking the form of a tall, distorted figure. The figure stepped forward, and Melissa felt a coldness seep into her bones. She ran for the door, but the figure blocked her path, its empty eyes glowing faintly red. Terrified, Melissa backed away, her breathing quick and shallow. The figure didn't move, but its presence was suffocating, as if the air in the room had grown heavier. Slowly, it raised a hand, and dark tendrils extended from its claws, wrapping around Melissa. She tried to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. The dark tendrils coiled tighter, freezing her to the core. In desperation, she grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it at the figure, but it passed through as if the figure were made of smoke. The figure leaned closer, its whisper filling the room. "You should not have opened the book. Now you are one of us." Melissa felt something change inside her, as if the darkness from the figure was seeping into her. Her hands began to tremble, and the veins in them turned black, as though something was crawling beneath her skin. She screamed in pain, but her scream turned into an unnatural low laughter that didn't sound like her own. The figure stepped back, seemingly satisfied, as Melissa fell to her knees, her eyes now glowing the same red. Melissa raised her head, her face twisted into a horrifying smile. She whispered slowly, "Now I see everything." She stood, her movements jerky and unnatural, as if her body no longer obeyed her. Approaching the mirror, she saw her reflection grinning eerily, though she herself was motionless. The mirror suddenly cracked, and a dark hand reached out, trying to grab her. She jumped back, but the mirror shattered into thousands of shards, each reflecting her grotesque face. From the shards rose thick black smoke, swirling around her and turning the room into chaos. Suddenly, the smoke cleared, and she found herself in another room, a circular hall with stone walls bathed in an eerie blue light. In the center stood a massive altar upon which lay the same book, its pages glowing and turning on their own. Voices echoed from all directions, whispering words in an unknown language. Melissa felt herself drawn to the book. Her hand touched it, and a blinding flash of light engulfed her, making her lose her balance. When she opened her eyes, she was back in her car. Everything seemed normal, but in the rearview mirror, she saw her eyes still glowing red. This is where Melissa's story ends. But who knows what comes next? Perhaps she is no longer who she once was.